Hey, welcome to Generative AI for Defenders with Sec-PaLM 2 and Duet AI. That is a mouthful. But thanks for coming, and let's go ahead and we're going to get the clicker and get situated. And I'm Eric Doerr. I lead the security operations engineering at Google Cloud and all of the platform work we're doing around security AI. And I have a little later in the session with me Jada Paul, who's the CISO of Dun & Bradstreet, who's going to talk a little bit about their journey, as well as Rex Thexton, who leads everything interesting at Accenture related to security, and is going to come on stage and talk a little bit about their experience. But I want to kind of jump right in, and I should also say my apologies for the profile picture. I wanted to have a serious security picture because I'm a serious security individual, and then someone told me that it makes me look like I'm a hitman. And so, but we couldn't change the slides, blah, blah, blah. So, here we are, but we're really here to talk about AI. And I don't know if you've noticed, but at Google Next, we're a little bit excited about generative AI. But I do want to kind of take a step back and say, look, as excited as we are about the possibilities that generative AI is unlocking across all the fields of technology, it's still a tool. And the tool has to solve real problems. It's not interesting to think about tools just for tool's sake or tech just for tech's sake. And we've framed, kind of talking to many customers, many of you, we think there are three big problems in security today. And we had to be alliterative, so threats, toil, and talent are the three. And obviously, many of you deal with these every day. You read about them in the news every day. The increasing hostility of the threat landscape, the growth of the attack surface. The reality is we hire amazing security experts and have them work on our teams, and many of them tell us that they love the mission of security, of protecting their organization, protecting the planet, and kind of hate their job because there's a lot of toil, there's a lot of things that just kind of suck and shouldn't take a human, but do take a human today. And then the third, of course, is the well-publicized talent gap, depending on who you believe, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of open jobs that we just can't fill with trained people in cybersecurity. And we're quite excited about how generative AI can help in each of these domains. And I'd say we already know that there's many places that this can happen, and we're still expanding the possibilities of where generative AI can do more to help us solve these real problems. In preventing threats, the most interesting mission is to say, if you borrow from the medical world, we may not be able to prevent patient 0 in all cases, but how can we prevent patient 1, patient 2, patient 3? How can we make it so a bad actor can use a new and novel technique once at most, not hundreds or thousands of times, which is the common practice today? Toil, how can we move to a world where humans are using their brains to do what only humans can do? And a lot of the drudgery, the monotony, the alert, triage, review, all that copy and paste between different tools, how can we take a huge chunk of that out of the daily lives of security personnel? And how can we both make it so that each individual on your security team does more, is capable of having more impact, but also, how do we help those people who are new in career to up-level their skill set? Again, these are places where we see generative AI being very helpful. We've announced a few first-party, in our current security tools, we've announced Duet AI and a few scenarios. If any of you caught the main keynote yesterday or the Security Spotlight keynote today, we did a bunch of demos in those. I'd encourage people to watch them if they weren't able to see them. I think it's pretty exciting, some of the capabilities we're bringing to bear. And just very briefly, I'll hit on 3 of them. Mandiant threat intelligence is, of course, one of the most trusted resources to learn about everything we know as Mandiant and everything we know now with Mandiant and Google Fuse together about the threat landscape, from doing over 1,000 incident response investigations every year, the worst of the worst breaches in the world, and taking the techniques and tactics that we find there, synthesizing them, attaching them to the actors who are abusing good people on the planet, and then making it so that you can take advantage of that and protect yourself. The beautiful thing about it is how much information we have, and the worst thing about it is how much information we have, because if you go start researching threat actors that attack oil and gas, good luck. It takes a long time. This is a classic example of where generative AI can help you find what you're looking for, summarize it, help you prepare the reports or the tools you might be preparing to protect your organization. Chronicle security operations. Our SIM takes in tremendous amounts of data, helps you synthesize it and make it actionable. It's amazing. Sub-second search across petabytes of information, and there's a learning curve. Yesterday, you had to learn the syntax of UDM and YARA-L in order to be truly proficient in the tool, and now we've added natural language conversion so that you can get going faster, be more productive, and kind of learn as you go. As well as places like you have a complex case, you understand what's going on, but do you have to be an expert, or do we help summarize for you what we're seeing and allow you to dig in when you dig in? These are the kinds of things that generative AI is doing. And last but not least, in Security Command Center, which is our tool that helps protect your workloads on GCP, we're doing a lot to help you understand not just theoretical vulnerabilities, but the actual exploitable attack paths, looking at your configuration, what's actually exploitable, and helping you prioritize. But again, to really get the most out of that yesterday, you needed to be pretty deep in security. Generative AI can help translate some of that, up-level it, have you focus on where you need to focus, and even help you with the recommendations and the actions you should take to fix it. These are 3 examples of what we're doing in our current products, but what we're really here to talk about today is what's powering this and how are we taking a platform approach to generative AI. And this is a fancy diagram that has a lot of information on it, but I want to tell the story of what led to this very briefly. You know, parts of Google have been working on AI for over a decade. And, you know, everyone, I think, knows at this point that, you know, Google's been involved in generative AI from the very beginning, doing some of the foundational research. I and some parts of my team have been doing AI for a while, but we have not been doing generative AI for 5 years. And when we started last year saying we're going to dig in, we see the potential of generative AI, we did not day one say we're going to build a platform and open that up to the world to come and build security use cases with partners and customers. What we did is we said, this seems really useful. Let's figure out how to use it in our products. And we got the benefit of building on top of the foundational knowledge that other parts of Google have been working on. And so that's awesome. We got a head start of doing that. But it turns out those foundational models, while they're trained on amazing data and on amazing scenarios, were not very good at security. And they're not good at security because security has a lot of jargon that's not generally available. The jargon is constantly changing. It's got a lot of proprietary data that's just not available in the training sets. And so what we quickly learned is we needed to actually make a security LLM. And so we started bringing data sources that we had, because as Google, we have a lot of data at our fingertips, and Mandiant, now part of Google Cloud, also brought a tremendous amount of information about security, about threat actors, and things like this. We started training this. And out of this came what we call Sec-PaLM, which is the new security LLM that is trained to speak the language of security very, very well. And around that, we've wrapped the Security AI Workbench. And this is important because it turns out just giving you a model isn't enough. It's giving you the tools to actually be productive with that model in a variety of applications and use cases. We're using that ourselves in the products I talked about for a minute. We're working with a variety of partners and customers to help bring that to them. And this is all important, and it's even more important that it's built on top of Vertex AI, which is, of course, Google Cloud's AI platform. And we get a lot of things as being part of that, built on top of Vertex AI. And one of the best, selfishly from my perspective as a security guy, is I don't have to start and think about how I build all the enterprise-grade controls that every customer I've talked to and every partner I've talked to that has this top-of-mind question: how do I secure it? How do I make sure there's not data leakage? What if it's really proprietary data I don't want other people to have access to? These are problems that Vertex has been working on and solving and building controls for years, and we're extending those controls now to generative AI. And so this is the story that got us to the aha moment that said, as we started building this, we realized it's hard, it requires a lot of unique data, and it requires constant evolution because security changes, and therefore the model has to change, because the model has to speak the current language of security at any point in time. It's not enough that it speaks what security looked like a year ago or 2 years ago. And so as we did that, we said, we need this for ourselves. Other people need it too. We need to open this up. And we think it's important it's building up a real platform ecosystem, and a partner ecosystem is hard. It takes time. and energy and lots of good collaboration and trust and many other things. But one of the things we think is important is that we're both using it ourselves and working with partners. And I think we get the best ecosystems when you have that kind of dynamic, where you have the direct feedback from using it yourself, the direct feedback from a set of trusted partners, and on. Very quickly, we build Security AI Workbench on top of Vertex AI for people building AI, whether they're partners extending their security solutions and bringing them to you all as customers, or whether you're a customer who's stitching together a workflow or extending something proprietary in your environment. I won't read everything on this slide. I will emphasize one thing: your data, your terms. From the beginning, we knew this was important. We already have spent years building these controls into Google Cloud and Vertex, and we're now extending those into the work we're doing in Generative AI and Security AI Workbench. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but again, to emphasize, all this is built on Vertex AI. We recognize there are a set of security-specific use cases, but there are also many use cases that are some security, some other things, and we're actually seeing some of the most interesting scenarios coming from the blending of, I'd say, business productivity-driven use cases and core security-driven use cases, and how all that comes together. And one of the great things about Vertex is it gives you access to everything Google knows about AI, and you can stitch that together in whatever way you want. At a high level, as we've been working with partners and customers and kind of exploring this ourselves, there are three big categories of use cases that we're seeing emerge right now that we think are very well suited to generative AI and very interesting. Again, I won't read the slide, but summarization, classification, and generation, and applying that to the use cases of security. And we've made a lot of progress in the relatively short time that we've been working on this and working with partners. It's important to note that as you think about working with generative AI and specifically with Sec-PaLM and AI Workbench, kind of two high-level choices. A lot of people that we're working with are saying, a little bit of prompt engineering. The work you've done to train the model is great. With a little bit of prompt engineering, we can have something really useful for our use case. In other scenarios, people are saying, look, I need to extend this. I need to write what used to be called a plugin, but I was told yesterday I can't say plugin anymore, and I now have to say extension. So an extension that accesses real-time data or proprietary data that you have and brings it into the model at inference time so that it can form interesting and correct conclusions. Of course, Security AI Workbench, as I said, fits into Vertex AI, into Generative AI Studio. We give you the tools at your fingertips to do all the experimentation that you need to do, all the fine-tuning you need to do, the prompt engineering you need to do. And, this is a quickly moving field. You should expect that those tools are getting better and better, on a regular basis. Just a quick thing. We announced that we were doing Security AI Workbench and Sec-PaLM 2 at RSA this year, so only, 4 months ago? And at the time, we announced that Accenture was joining us on this journey as the first partner to help us both build that foundational model as well as start to extend and explore some of these use cases. And I thought it would be interesting to share very quickly, well, what have we learned in 4 months? It might not seem like a lot of time, but I'll tell you, it's been a lot of work in 4 months. And I think there's a couple of things. One is, for all that the foundational LLMs are really amazing and getting better all the time, for all the work we've done to extend and build the security LLM, prompt engineering is still important, and it's a skill, and it's a skill that a lot of parts of the industry, I think, are realizing they need to build. It's not like there's just enough people who know how to do prompt engineering. So this is about us as an industry building the capability to go do this. And a lot of the customers and partners we interacted with at the beginning are kind of didn't recognize that was important. And in a lot of cases, it's been, hey, let's help get you bootstrapped and start working on that journey of kind of building that capability. There's been a lot of talk about hallucinations around generative AI and techniques to avoid hallucinations like grounding. And I think, but there's an interesting thing, which is one of the things that we love about generative AI is I'll say that what feels like creativity, of course it's not actual creativity, but what feels like creativity of these is part of what makes them productive and useful. And we're finding that there's a fine line between, locking down a model so much that it can never hallucinate, and do you destroy what you're trying to get from a productivity? And so there's a balance to be found there, and we're building techniques and evolving techniques for grounding in certain categories of data, so that it can be useful in all the dimensions, because of course nobody wants misleading advice. We've also heard many use cases, many ideas of places we could do more in security and compliance and privacy, policy, things like that. Generally, there's a convergence around a few of these scenarios that are on the slide. Lots of people see the need for that in the daily operations of their teams. We are hearing more and more about wanting to do more with code, wanting to do more with policy, wanting to do more with compliance. And I think as an industry, we'll get there, but crawl, walk, run. And then finally, just the diversity of readiness of organizations. And I say this with absolutely no judgment and lots of humility as a person who, if you'd asked me, 18 months ago, I probably couldn't have spelled transformer, and now I spend a significant percentage of every day thinking about AI and working on AI with a bunch of people in the team. And so I think it's clear that different people are in different places, and kind of the best advice I can give to everybody is, regardless of where you are on the journey, make sure you're taking conscious steps to learn and evolve your own business and looking for places that it's useful to you. I want to highlight, at RSA 4 months ago, we said Accenture was joining us on the journey. A few months later, we announced a set of other partners who are joining us on the journey. And big shout out if there's Accenture in the room, because Rex is going to come up in a minute. But we are better thanks to the partnership here, and we have other partners coming on board, and we'll announce that more and more over time. But the breadth of these partners and them pushing our thinking on scenarios and giving us feedback on what's working and what's not working, super valuable in the journey, because we're all learning how generative AI can make security better than it has been. There's a quote from the head of Accenture Security, which I think is pretty awesome, and that's a good segue to invite my friend Rex up to stage. And as I mentioned, we've been hard at work with them for a while now, and he was kind enough to agree to both come on stage, but also to share some of the work that they've been doing. So I think we're going to roll a video and then chat about it for a minute, if the video works.
Let's hope so.
There we go.
In cybersecurity, the threat landscape is rapidly evolving.
Yes.
Security operations centers are challenged to hire, retain, and scale the right people, deploy, adopt, and sustain the right technologies, and accelerate responses to the unpredictable threat landscape. Time to response is a critical factor in preventing a catastrophic security breach. A new threat actor's activity has been attributed to the Temp.Armageddon campaign, where they leveraged a Cobalt strike beacon to deliver a malicious payload to multiple corporations. Pat, a security intelligence analyst for Accenture's Managed Extended Detection and Response team, noticed the new threat that could directly impact company assets. Pat quickly logged into the MXDR platform powered by the Google Cloud AI Security Workbench and reviewed the current detection logic. He noticed there wasn't a rule that would monitor or alert for this new behavior. Pat created a new rule and then enabled the retro hunt of the rule to determine if this threat actor was already inside a client's environment. After the retro hunt completes, the security AI assistant will send out a Cobalt strike alert. Sam is a security operations center analyst on the same team as Pat. Sam worked with his SOC team to initially develop and deploy the current threat detection rules. At the time, Sam and his Tier 1 peers were new to SOC operations and may not have strong enough rules in place to detect, respond, and mitigate threat activity spawning from the use of Cobalt strike beacons. Sam is utilizing a security AI assistant chat. Meanwhile, Morgan, who does not work for Accenture, is faced with the same situation as Sam, without an AI assistant.
Hello?
Hi, Sam. I hope you had a good weekend. I've received 2 important alerts that I need to share with you. I've identified 1 MITRE attack tactic, techniques, and procedure at play. I've also attached the alerts for your reference. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Sam asks the AI assistant about Cobalt Strike attacks and how they are used. He receives a summarized explanation of Cobalt Strike attacks and a list of its related attackers and uses.
How should I escalate this alert?
I suggest that we escalate the incident to Fred Vespucci, a Level 3 SOC specialist. The triggered alerts might indicate a dangerous exploit with Cobalt Strike attempting to compromise 2 hosts. Considering the severity of these alerts, it is highly probable that the activities stem from a Cobalt Strike beacon.
The large language model, Sec-PaLM, considers the level of criticality or severity, MITRE attack framework tactics, similar historic incidents, and chooses an appropriate path of escalation.
The suggested action is to escalate this incident to Fred Vespucci, a Level 3 SOC specialist, to avoid further breaches.
While Sam has rapidly escalated the incident, Morgan would take much longer to research and decide how to best escalate the situation.
Thanks. Can you generate a client incident report for me?
The security AI assistant generates a client incident report.
The incident was escalated for further investigation and initial remediation steps were taken. A copy of the client incident report document has been saved.
The security AI assistant generates the client incident report as a Word document so he can review, edit, and share with his client. Meanwhile, Morgan has spent the larger portion of the day manually creating an incident report.
Okay, this is done. Can you give me feedback?
The AI assistant will look at its chat history and incident metadata. Sam receives real-time feedback, while Morgan will not get feedback until a meeting later in the week. Utilizing the security AI assistant, Sam was able to accurately escalate the incident, create an incident report, and receive critical feedback in minutes. For a security analyst, without the security AI assistant, this would take hours. This is just one analyst story. At scale, an organization would benefit from 80 to 90% time savings, allowing analysts to focus on important and critical tasks.
Well, it's so cool to see. Obviously, I've seen it before, but so cool to see the progress that Accenture's made, and I'd love to just hear a little bit about the journey, Rick.
Yeah, no, it was super exciting. So when we met at RSA, and I know Connie and Jonathan are here, and they put a lot of work into this, and Scott as well. You know, we went out to, it's all new to us, right? We went out and we identified 70 plus use cases that we wanted to do, and then we met with your team and found out that you were doing 30 of them. And so we didn't want to be redundant, and so we focused on what made sense to work on, and I think the 2 areas that we found in your thing were toil and scale, right? Those were the 2 areas that we focused on because we feel there's not enough security professionals in the world to do this, and so if we can automate a lot of these tasks and get people doing the right kind of work, we can help scale this business from that perspective. I think the collaboration, we talked about prompt engineering and all that. I mean, we sent over a boatload of prompts and it didn't work. And so then we had to refine and learn, and I think that journey and that process and the collaboration between the 2 teams, I mean, this actually works. That's in our MXDR portal right now, and the thing is, if we showed it to you, it would be like a 2-minute demo, and you'd be like, oh, so we had to put a story around it. That's why there's all the drama and the voices, but I think the collaboration with your team has been, bar none, amazing, and I think, and this is just one of the use cases. The other one around cloud security and the auto remediation and code generation is super amazing too. But yeah, so that's kind of it from that perspective.
Any advice to folks who are maybe a little earlier on the journey on things to focus on, things to think about?
Yeah, I think the mistake that we made is we thought we wanted to do our own LLM initially, right? And then what we quickly realized is that it's about the data and the telemetry and who has that trusted security data. And the reason we're excited and working with Sec-PaLM is because, like we talked about, you have 80% of the internet, you have all the mandiant threat intel, you have the virus total, DeepMind, all that data, and being able to train and have access to that, and to to be able to provide the prompts and then leverage our own extensions to create our own unique IP is super important. And so it's more about understanding what's out there and what can be trusted. Because I think you talked about insights versus hallucinations. I thought that was quite a fascinating thing. You are going to have some hallucinations. And I think on the cloud piece we struggled with that a bit, but we were able to train and tune and drive that to where we had enough efficacy to feel that we would get more value out of it than worried about the 2% of hallucinations that we would get, right, from that perspective. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, any kind of parting thoughts for folks who are on the journey, or any beat me up about anything on stage?
No, I think the one thing I can say is we've been working with your team for a year now. Once we decided to re-platform, and the collaboration that we've been able to do with you guys is bar none. You guys are huge, but you act small. I think that the collaboration and the ability to work together and drive these meaningful pieces is super important. I think the other thing is, understand from your partners what they're already developing, because you don't want to build redundant capabilities, right? I think that was step one for us. And then, what we've done is they stopped here and we took it from there. And then, you're getting double the work, double the value out of it versus trying to build something that's already going to be out there from that perspective.
That's awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you for the partnership.
Right.
And
thank you.
I look forward to keeping working on this together. I used the wrong slide. So next, I want to bring up Jada Paul, who's the CISO at Dun & Bradstreet, a great customer on GCP, working with us on security and AI. Yeah. Are you on?
I don't know, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there we go. So I'd love maybe just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about the Dun & Bradstreet journey and kind of what you've been doing with us over the last couple of years.
Sure. First, thanks for having me. We'll talk a little bit about Dun & Bradstreet and what we are and who we are and what we do. Most notably, for those of you who are familiar with the DUNS number, which is kind of something similar to a social security number as an individual or as a person. It is a social security number for your business. And we are a global leader in decisioning data and analytics. So we have more data than you can possibly imagine. And when we talk about what we're going to talk about around Gen AI and models, the data, the cleanliness, the quality is most important, because what comes in is what you get out. So as a CISO, I'm a strong believer in enabling. The role of the CISO has changed drastically over the last let's say 2 to 3 years, where we need to really focus on being more of an enabler versus that historical department of no. And I think this opportunity with what we're doing now with enabling the organization to leverage Gen AI and these LLMs is really a unique opportunity for us, because it's always been challenging for a CISO to find that, where do I drive value, where do I offer value outside of just protecting the org, and truly this is one of those opportunities for us.
Well, that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit, I know you launched recently the AI labs, and you've been on the journey with Vertex and GCP. Can you just talk a little bit about how that's going?
For sure. Most recently, we actually had an announcement that hit the wires yesterday with regards to Gen AI Labs. So we released Gen AI Labs as an opportunity for us to co-innovate with our customers, right? Bring an opportunity for them to come in and basically play with us and learn with us and build some innovative solutions and opportunities. And yesterday we announced explicitly that Vertex AI is a major part of that initiative, and we are largely building our labs around Vertex AI's capabilities.
That's awesome. Thanks for the congratulations on the announcement.
Yep.
Thanks for the partnership. What are the things I know that is getting top of mind for people, especially as they're starting to use more AI techniques, generative AI, is how do we think about the security of those systems as well? And I know this is something you've thought a lot about. Any thoughts on how you're approaching it and what we can do as an industry?
Yeah, first I'll talk a little bit about the journey of how we got to where we're at with regards to GCP itself. We've been on this journey for about 18 months of building, GCP platform out secure by default, right? You guys, Google calls it invisible security, et cetera. But the idea of being able to build the platform from the ground up as code, being repeatable, consumable for our DevOps teams, for our data scientists. When we talk a little bit about securing models themselves, I didn't want the teams to have to worry about securing the underlying infrastructure. I wanted that's already the case, right? So we're there, and we built again, everything infrastructure as code, and we took a 3-phased approach. First being leveraging Google's GCP's default capabilities. Yesterday there were some really, really good sessions, if you missed them, on kind of building GCP by default, like the concept of the blueprints, the security blueprints, which is really the way to, introduce that secure by default. And then phase 2 of that really is building consumable, repeatable modules so that they're secure by default, they're easily consumable, and the teams that are building on top of them don't have to worry about configuring them, or building them from scratch. It's already a predefined model. And then 3 is obviously the compliance as code, making sure that nobody can do anything that we otherwise wouldn't want them to do. So when you take care of that piece, focusing on protecting the models themselves is what we're looking for. So that really comes down to, protecting data. I mean, a traditional cyber program, if done well, you already have data security, you already have identity management, those are all still, and application product security, all still core components to being able to protect the model. And there are some novel threats that are introduced as a result of, LLMs and whatnot. And those are the one-offs that you're going to have to manage, like poisoning and prompt injection and all those things. But I think you take care of the basics. You take care of 80% of the risk.
Yeah, very good. And as a defender, you and your team were in the trenches of protecting the organization. And as you think about the use cases, is there some, and you saw some of the stuff from Accenture, some of the stuff we're working on, what jumps out at you as being, something you think, boy, my team could take advantage of that, or boy, I can't wait until something capability comes?
First of all, that was a great demo. That was really cool. I think a couple of things. Lowering the barrier to entry. When you think of what LLMs and things like ChatGPT are bringing, it's lowering the barrier to entry for threat actors, right? Easier phishing emails, et cetera. The same goes for cyber security professionals, right? Like, this is giving the opportunity for people to maybe do things that they wouldn't normally do, or that they would normally have to take some time to learn, right? Like writing queries in Chronicle, having that natural language processing takes away the need to learn how to write those things. Or analyzing large amounts of data. I think you touched on it when you opened up. Like, we are dealing with more and more data today than we ever have before, but it's not possible for a human to be able to analyze all that data, as quickly or as efficiently, or even, realistically as we would like. So this is giving LLMs and LLMs will give an opportunity for us to be able to process much more data much faster. I think threat intelligence, right? Largely for most threat intelligence programs, they are threat feeds. You get a bunch of IP addresses, some hashes, et cetera, and really there's no context to it. I do think that Gen AI is going to bring us, along with what you guys are doing with Mandiant, bring us a more contextually aware threat intelligence capability to actually really pull the needle out of the stack of needles, so to speak. And then I think at some point, I think we're not there yet, application development, secure coding will be an area where we see Gen AI offer some really, really strong capabilities. It's going to take some time to get there because of where the data is coming from and what it's learning on, but I do eventually believe that will be a way to improve the developer experience and get code to market much quicker than securely, much quicker than that's happening today.
That's great. And any advice for folks maybe earlier in the journey on things to think about, things to avoid, start?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. Focus on the basics. Don't get too wrapped up on how advanced generative AI is, and that you're only looking at the threats associated with it. You do have to deal with those, but the underlying stuff is really the stuff that's going to protect you most of the way. Governance is super important. Don't start jumping right into doing tech and building models until you have a good governance in place with your legal team, with your compliance team, because at the end of the day, all of that is what matters the most when you're protecting your intellectual property, making sure that you're not using somebody else's intellectual property. So those things are super important. And focus on the frameworks, right? You got Secure AI. Google has its Secure AI framework, which is really set out to help you define a roadmap on securely building Gen AI systems. But NIST has its risk management framework. The MITRE Atlas framework allows us to do threat detection. And then OWASP Top 10 has a specific LLM focus on application risks associated with the developing model. So focus on the stuff, and really focus on the basics. Don't try to get too caught up in being advanced. And the last thing I'll say is when we talk about models, what Vertex AI has brought to us, I think, is the idea of this end-to-end capability, right? We don't have to worry about too much on the inside. It does sit inside our account, right? So our data is our data. It's not going anywhere. You're bringing preset defined models with the model garden. So we don't have to worry as much about that through the way you've built the platform. And this allows us to focus on the data. This allows us to focus on the front end of what is getting developed to interact with the model. And be very careful about the models that you choose because the wrong model, the wrong open source model could certainly have an adverse impact on you as far as protecting intellectual property because there are a lot of open source license models out there that are unfavorable to your org.
Well, thank you so much for being a great customer and a great partner and coming and talking with the group here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.